Hi everyone, Haze here. I'm an artist and speed painter from Malaysia, and today I have a treat for you guys. So there's a new glitter brush pack I've created recently for Procreate 5, and I will also be sharing this wonderful little portrait that I just did. But before that, today's video is sponsored by Paperlike. Paperlike is a screen protector for iPad that simulates the texture of paper that you can use when you're drawing using your favorite drawing app like Procreate, and it will reduce the amount of frustration that you have, especially if you have sweaty hands, and also it will improve your experience when you're drawing because it provides a texture like surface that is similar to paper that can make you draw more seamlessly as if you're just drawing naturally using a pen or pencil. So I hope you enjoy this video, and let's get started. So today we're going to start with some anatomy, and we're going to start with a circle. So with this circle in place, we're going to split it into half. This line will be where our brow bone will sit, and then we will split it into half again vertically, and this will be the direction that the face is facing and also the nose line. Then we're gonna halve it again vertically, and this will be where our ear will sit. And of course the face is not round, so we'll need a flat plane for the side of the face that reaches up to the temple. This plane will be centered along the line of the brow bone and also the ear line. After that, we need to flatten the other side of the face, and this line should be parallel to the vertical nose line. Then I'll try and estimate the jawline, but it's just an estimate for now. Then we'll do a marking halfway between the brow line and the top of the head for the hairline. After that, we'll just divide the bottom half into two for our nose line, and then we will get our eye line by dividing the section into two again. Now for a recap of all the lines and what they mean. If you divide halfway down from the nose to the jaw, then we will get our lips line. After that, it's just a matter of estimating the angle of the other jaw line, but this is just an estimate. Now we are finally ready to start a new layer and sketch our features for all the face. Now if you look here, the jawline is constantly changing because everybody's jawline is different, and some of the features can also be positioned because everybody looks different, but basically the proportions should be the same. Here I'm just using the default Procreate painting brushes to block in some tones for me to smudge around. I wanted things to be blurry and sketchy this time, and now I'm switching to my portrait brush set using the sketch brush for the sketching. Also, did you know that with Procreate 5 release, you can now detach the palette and then you can float it wherever you want it to? Basically, what I'm doing right now is a monotone sketch of the painting using just one dark color to sketch out all the tonal values, and now I'm using the flat brush to block in more colors so that I don't have to cross-hatch so many things when I sketch. For blending, I'm using a new brush that I'm developing, but you can use the flat brush smudge shown here to blend out all the tones. I'm trying not to be very neat this time, not using the airbrush because I want it to have a watercolor feel. So if you notice, I never change color, and if I need a lighter tone, I'll just use the eraser. So basically my sketch right now is pretty transparent, all the lights are by erasing. Recently, I love using sketching techniques in my portraits because I love how it looks so analog and painterly. So I like to have a lot of sketch lines as I am working on my painting. So I slowly clean up the sketch that I had before on this new layer and try and add all the details that I want, and also define the tones at the same time. Once I've resketched and refined the current layer, I can then hide the one below it. And now comes the fun part of sketching everything and cross-hatching it. So basically what I like about this technique is that because I'm working on details instead of looking at the bigger picture as I'm shading the entire face, I can then modify the tones as I like and make things darker or lighter compared to the reference that I have. I like to give extra attention and details to the lips, the nose and the eyes, while the face I spend less time and I also give less shading to them so that I can maintain the focus on the features of the face. So for the nose, I like to overmodel and give a lot of details to the tip of the nose and give less details to the nose bridge because I just prefer this as a style in general. Once I feel that there's not much I can do when it comes to sketching and cross-hatching, I decided to put in more tones for the face and shade a little bit more to help me when I sketch in the other details. So for this, I used the airbrush from my Procreate brush pack for this quick shading. I switch back and forth between the airbrush and the soft blend from my smudge brush pack to quickly blend out the tones. And then of course after that I like to use the eraser to clean up the edges and the lines. Ready, I switch to my flat brush smudge to smudge the tones once again, because this smudge brush will pull lines and make them seem like they are sketched instead of being painted on. This brush, when used as the blender, will actually pull streaks across the face, and then it will seem like they were dragged on by pencil or by brush marks, so I like it because it seemed very natural and organic. Then after that, I repeat and go ahead with my sketch brush again to put in more details using sketch lines. So here as I'm sketching, I'm trying to think of the direction of my sketch lines so that they will flow nicely together and that the sketch of the whole composition would be pleasing and not stiff. And for the hair, I use a flat brush smudge again to smudge them around so that they have soft edges and that they look painted on. Then I erase part of the outline at the area where light meets so that they appear to be out of focus. When I shade and sketch out the shadow shapes, I like to turn them into geometric shapes and then blend them out towards one direction, but I like to make the shape very distinct so that the simplification of the shapes can be seen clearly. The same goes for the highlights, and I like to make the shapes of the lights and shadows very designed and geometric so that there's a simplification process involved and that it appears to be more artistic. Sometimes when certain areas are messy or not as dark as I would like them to, I blend them out and then I re-sketch those areas to improve the directions and the brush strokes of the sketching. Here I'm really trying to exaggerate the shading of the nose so that the tip of the nose is a little bit darker than the rest of the nose. I wanted to draw more attention to this area of the face. Now I'm going to start working on the forehead. The forehead has a very distinct light and shadow shape, so we're going to try and incorporate that into the design. And here I'm reworking the eyes all over again so that I give them more definition this time. As I'm sketching, I constantly soften the edges using the flat brush smudge tool so that I have soft edges and also hard edges from the sketching. I'm very picky about having the correct balance of soft and hard edges in my painting, as I believe that they create good contrast for retaining the attention of the viewer. I started to build up the darks in the painting so that they have a bit more contrast going on. So now I want to talk a little bit about the direction of the brush strokes, and this is roughly how I plan the direction of the brush strokes for my face so that they flow smoothly along the curvature of the muscle groups on the face. You don't have to worry about getting it exactly the same or whether it is correct or incorrect. You just have to work out your own flow and make sure that everything is harmonious. Now I'm going to start reworking the lips, and for the lips I'm going to ignore all the reflections and the highlights for now and just do a matte modeling of the lips first. I like to keep them dark so that they have a direct contrast with the rest of the face. As you're working on the lips, remember that the teeth also require shading and they are not as light as you thought they would be. Once the initial blending is done, I try to work out the shapes of the shadow groups on the lips. I started to slowly define certain shapes on the bottom of the lips to show that the lighting is quite harsh here, And also not to forget the area where the lips meets the chin also has to be defined. For finishing touches, I'm sketching the earrings and also redefining some highlights around the eyes. I'm also giving a pupil texture using the pupil brush for my portrait brush pad for the eyes. I'm also careful to use the erase mode when I'm using this pupil brush because I do not want to introduce any new colors to this sketch. So there are no lighter colors, there's only just one color, which is this blue, and then everything else is just different opacity. Now I want to introduce some skin texture to the face, and I'm using the skin texture brush on the erase mode to erase away some of this texture so that I can see that there's a slight texture going on for the face. I can also use this same brush with the brush mode so that I can paint in some texture in the highlights area. So now we can begin coloring this layer, and we can start by making this layer alpha mode turned on, and then I'm going to pick this color and fill it entirely with this color for the sketch layer. So just for fun, I'm going to leave parts of the hair blue. Then I'm going to create a new layer underneath the sketch layer and give it a new skin tone color. To do this, I just start picking light brown colors and see if I can match the skin tone of the face that I want to represent. So I can try different colors and see which one is the correct one. Once I felt I got the correct color, I start to erase away the edges and clean up everything. Then I turned on the alpha mode and adjusted the areas of the highlights to be slightly more yellowish. I'm just playing around with my easy skin tone color palette, and you can download this color palette from my website. Because I like the contrasting colors so much, I decided to add even more different colors to her hair, like watercolor style. I try to get a good mix of red, blues, purples and browns to even out the color changes. And then I use the same technique using Procreate's new watercolor brush to put in more different colors in the background. I'm using colors from my highlights palette. You can also download this color palette from my website. Please bear in mind that I am still on the new layer, which is beneath the sketch layer, and I'm just adjusting the colors on this layer. Now that I figure out the color scheme of the entire painting, I am detailing the color changes for the eyes. I'm just using the airbrush and dropping in the colors, controlling their opacity using the pen pressure. Because my sketch layer was very detailed, so now my coloring process is really easy to do and doesn't take a very long time. When you're filling in the colors for the teeth and the whites of the eye, remember to use a grey or blues, but do not use white. Also remember to introduce some reds on the tip of the nose, and also for the blusher. For the color bounds on her jawline, I try to keep them as vibrant as possible, starting with reds and then introducing some orange into it. When I feel that there's nothing else to be done on this layer, I go back to my sketch layer and then I start to recolor some of the areas, because essentially this layer is the shadow pass, and not every shadow is going to be in dark brown, especially the eyebrows is going to be black, so we're going to have to adjust the colors for this layer as well. I also have a choice to make certain areas darker, especially the eyes, but I've decided to go against it because I wanted a lower contrast look. But for now, we're just gonna leave this layer be, and I'm gonna create a new layer and work on our highlights. So for the highlights, I'm gonna start by doing the highlights on the earrings, and I'm just gonna use the sketch brush to paint in the highlights. I like to layer on highlights so that the colors get more vibrant with each time I paint on top of it. So this one I started with orange, and then now I'm gonna go ahead and add yellow on top of the highlights, and of course I'm gonna end with white. Now here comes the exciting part where I will actually be using the new glitter brush pack that is version 2, created especially for Procreate 5. So if you see here, this new brush actually has color dynamics. This means that as you're using some of the brushes in this brush pack, the color will actually change depending on your pen pressure. This new feature and function in Procreate 5 allows for more realistic rendering when it comes to glitter and things that require color changes, such as glitter brushes and watercolor brushes. So the first brush that we'll be exploring is the featured highlights freestyle brush from this new glitter brush pack. Don't forget that we are doing this on a completely new layer above all the other layers. Here I'm just stacking the highlights by painting over it again and again to get different colors, and then I can erase the edges away and then smudge it out. So I repeat the same thing for the other highlights on the face, especially the ones on the nose. It's very important to pick the right color and chroma for your highlights when you're using this brush. So if your colors of your highlights are very vibrant, you can always choose to move the slider of the color to be grayer. Also, you can try and check your layer setting and see if the blending mode is on add or normal. You can just switch them around if you want to. Because this brush is a brightening brush, every time you paint on top of it, it will get brighter and brighter. So it's easier if you use a bigger brush when you're working on bigger areas. This will prevent the brush strokes from looking a bit messy, so this will get it to be smooth, or you can just use the blender brush to blend it out. Using the same brush, I can also draw in some glitter manually, especially at areas where you really want the location of the glitter to be precise. So for this, I try to use a very small size brush. And you can also be a bit more picky with your colors, and if they are vibrant, then the highlights would be pretty vibrant. The key is to keep the glitter very tiny when you're using this brush. Here I'm trying something different. I'm putting in a large highlight first, and then I'm smudging it out to soften the edges. Then I drew on the glitter manually using the same color but a smaller size for the brush. For this large bokeh highlight effect, I use my fingers to tap on the screen instead of using the pencil, because that will give me the maximum size for the brush. I took multiple tries to get them into the correct position, and then I used the same brush and I added some details into this bokeh highlight. Using this same technique, I changed colors and used my fingers to tap on the rest of the big bokeh highlights. For the glitter on the eyeshadow, I overblended the highlights area so that it appears soft. I do the same thing for the lips, but this time I lower the opacity of the brush so that I have a lot more control over the outcome. For the jaw, I chose a bright orange to match the color bounce color, and then once I get the correct size, I start to blend them out. Then after that, I do all the manual highlights for the glitter, and this time I just focus on doing those glitter that I know that the random glitter brush won't be able to do the job. For the lips, I like to layer on the highlights by doing a soft pass first, and then after that I'll slowly go in and do the opaque white highlights. Also have to be careful to get the highlights to be all different sizes, so sometimes after that I will adjust them and try to make some of them a little bit smaller or bigger by smudging them. I also needed to make the mid-tones of the lips a lot more vibrant so that they will pop out. Using the basic mixed glitter highlights brush from the new glitter brush pack, I painted some very subtle highlights onto the lips. Using the texturizer tool brush, I added some highlights that resemble skin texture, so this will serve as a base for the subsequent glitter highlights to sit on. I just use a big brush size to paint it all over the face where I want them to be, and then I started erasing them in areas that I don't want them to go on. Now I create a new layer and use the soft brightening sparkles brush to add some glitter onto all the highlights areas. Because I already have the texturizer tool base beneath this, so when I add the glitter now, it looks quite reasonable, but I still of course have to erase them in areas that I don't want them to appear, since this is quite a random brush. Next, I'm going to switch to the Holo Glitter brush. This is a brand new brush for this a new brush pack. So this is a glitter brush that constantly changes color as you paint them. It does not matter what color you choose because the colors are always changing, but what does matter is the grayness and the brightness of the glitter. So right here I'm using quite a bright color, so all the glitter that are appearing is different color but they have the same whiteness. Now back to our soft brightening sparkles brush. I'm putting them onto the cheek so that I can demo to you guys how this works. And I'm going to use the holo glitter brush again to add more highlights to this area. I switch back and forth between these two brushes for most of the highlights on the face. If you look carefully here, I am using orange, but when I paint the holo glitter on, they are appearing in purple and yellow, so this is what I meant by different colors appearing. As for the eyeshadow, the base is in purple, so now I'm using a yellow brightening sparkles for the next stage of the glitter. Because yellow and purple are complementary colors, so from far, the entire eyeshadow will appear to be grey. For these sides of the cheeks, I'm using the Sparse Shards brush, and this is a very sharp brush because the particles for this brush have hard edges, so from far they will appear to look very sharp. On top of that, I use the soft brightening sparkles to soften the look, so this brush have a softer edge which will result in a more powdery look. Here I just use the basic mixed glitter brush to put on more glitter on the face, so this glitter brush does not change color, so we can be specific in what color we want to use for the glitter. And now I start to detail the bokeh highlights that we have tapped previously with our finger. The holo glitter brush really shines when you use a vibrant color, then you can really see all the color changes that are possible. So if you want a different color, you can just undo and try it again, and just to get some color combinations that are nice. Try to pick different colors and see what happens when you're using this holo brush. Then when you want more control over the colors, you can pick any of the glitter brushes with the name basic in front of it. Then any color you choose will be the color that appears on the canvas. Now back to the features highlights freestyle brush, I can then add details to the glitter that are already on the screen. This time, instead of drawing dots, I'm mostly drawing lines because some of the highlights are between screen creases and wrinkles, so when we have lines, they seem to be more realistic. Once you add lines into your highlights, they will seem to give a wet look to your face. At this stage, I have a couple of layers that are all highlights, and I can then adjust some of the opacity for some of the layers to see the effect I can get on the portrait. Once I'm satisfied, I can use the sketch brush to add in more details to the drawing. And now back to the featured highlights freestyle brush. I'm using it to put more bokeh highlights by tapping my finger on the screen. And then I'm going to use the featured highlights hexagon brush to put in hexagon highlights on my portrait, but then I will adjust their opacity as I place them on the screen. I also use the juicy sparkle brush and tap once, then I can adjust their size and location to where I want them to be. I'm also going to use this featured highlights hexagon 1 brush, which are actually just triangles, but I forgot to rename the brush, so I wanted a triangle highlight on my neck. And then I'm just going to use the sketch brush to do my final touch-ups for the lips. And then we're just going to call this portrait completed. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Remember to download this brush pack at my website hazelong.com. Remember to subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram. See you next time. Bye.